Yeah.
Okay, welcome to everyone. We're about to get started, so please find your seats. Make sure I'm... Yes, okay. Welcome to the launch of American Scholar by Patrick.
Yeah.
And welcome to the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder of the Bureau, along with my partner, Donnie Jochum. The short explanation for our lengthy name is that we are a government agency for a government that does not yet exist. And the service we provide, the main one, is holding this space for queer culture. So we are an all-volunteer, independent queer bookstore. We founded this project in 2012. We've been here at the center since 2014. And here we are, still alive, surviving, thanks to people like you. So we are an all-volunteer organization, which means I'm going to ask you for some money. So we have a suggested donation of $10. I'm going to pass this around. There's change in here if you need it. But if money is tight and you plan on buying a book, save your money for the book. That's why we're here. But I'll pass this around. You can also donate to us if you're watching online or here in person on Venmo at BGSPD, which are the letters that are all around you, everywhere you go. And I'll pass that to you. Thank you so much. Before I introduce Patrick, I want to read a brief land acknowledgement. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We are actively seeking to partner with and provide material support to a local queer Indigenous organization. We hope to make an announcement about this in the near future, but in the meantime, we encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. So the Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more about that at mannahattafund.org. So, the man of the hour, Patrick E. Horrigan, is the author of novels Pennsylvania Station, Portraits at an Exhibition, the memoir Widescreen Dreams, Growing Up Gay at the Movies, the play Messages for Gary, and the solo show You Are Confused, which he co-authored with his husband, Eduardo Lines. Having taught literature for over 25 years at LIU Brooklyn, he is currently training to become a docent at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Please welcome.
Thank you so much, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So first of all, I want to thank Greg and Donnie of the Bureau for hosting this event. You guys do such amazing work in the community. And also, I want to congratulate both Greg and Donnie for being the recent winners of the 2023 Publishing Triangle Leadership Award for their contribution to the health, vibrancy, and prestige of LGBTQ literature. I also want to thank our amazing DJ Star Dow, Martha Dow. And I want to thank Eduardo for the refreshments and for all the support you've given to this event. And most of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for coming out in the rain. It's such an honor and a joy to be here with all of you. I really, really am touched and thrilled. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you. You too. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where the idea for American Scholar came from. And then I'll read a few passages and open it up for questions and comments. I got the idea for the novel in the late 1980s when I was a graduate student in American Studies. In one of my classes, I was assigned the book American Renaissance. That's this. The subtitle is Art and Expression in the Age of Emerson and Whitman, and it was by someone named F.O. Matheson. American Renaissance was first published in 1941, but it was still considered almost half a century later an important, though controversial text for understanding American literature. Controversial because of Matheson's all-white, all-male, though interestingly, majority queer canon of great American authors. I became intrigued by the book for a number of reasons. I thought the title itself, American Renaissance, was mysteriously sexy. I found the thesis even sexier, which is that 19th century American literature deserves a place alongside the very best of world literature, ancient and modern. But most of all, I was fascinated by the life of the author. He was a socialist in a culture becoming increasingly hostile toward the left, especially during the Cold War. A gay man involved in a long-term intergenerational relationship at a time when gay life was heavily policed and persecuted, and the victim of severe depression, ultimately killing himself in 1950 at the age of 48. When I entered graduate school, I had just come out. So Matheson was a kind of queer academic role model for me, but his life was also a cautionary tale because it ended in tragedy. While studying Matheson, I was romantically involved with someone much like him, a socialist, a scholar, and the victim of severe bipolar disorder. I became both concerned and fascinated by this coincidence in my intellectual and personal life. I wanted to understand what seemed to be my attraction to a certain kind of self-destructive gay intellectual. That's how the seeds for the novel got planted. It took me, however, well over 2 decades to reach the point where I felt I could write about it in a way that made sense. Now, American Scholar takes place in late October 2016, a week before the presidential election of that year. It depicts one night in the life of James Fitzgerald, a middle-aged writer and professor. The narrative is punctuated by a series of extended flashbacks to the late 1980s when James, or Jimmy, as he called himself then, was getting his PhD in American Studies. I'll start with a scene that takes place in the spring of 1987. Jimmy, 23 years old, decides to join a gay men's reading group at Columbia University, organized by a Columbia grad named Gregory. Jimmy Fitzgerald entered the shift room of Earl Hall and took a quick look around. He felt nervous. 15 or 20 guys stood talking in small groups and pairs. Others sat in folding chairs arranged in a wide circle. Though many of the seats were already taken, he spotted 3 in a row still unoccupied. He crossed the room, trying to act like he knew what he was doing, like he belonged here, and chose the middle of the 3 so as not to have to sit next to anyone. At least not yet. Avoiding all eye contact, he methodically removed his coat and scarf and hung them over the back of the chair. He withdrew the book along with a notepad from his backpack and placed them on his lap. He dug through an inside pocket until he found his lucky silver cross pen. Now he wanted another moment to get comfortable, just take in his surroundings. The room was handsome, high ceiling, chandelier, deep-set arched windows with long drapes, dark wooden wainscoting, marble fireplace, an enormous Persian carpet. He took a deep breath. The buzz in the room grew louder as the hour approached. He wasn't ready to interact. At the same time, he wished he were any one of these guys now boisterously laughing and talking with friends. But of course, that's why he'd come in the first place. After living in New York for 2 years with hardly any social life to speak of, and since the breakup with Andy, virtually no romantic life, what he needed was friends, like-minded, openly gay friends. The gay study group at Columbia promised to be the answer to his prayers. The chatter in the room died down as Gregory called the group to order. Welcome to the gay study group at Columbia. My name is Gregory Lenda. Most of you know me. By day, I'm the bookkeeper for Democratic Socialists of America, and by night, I'm the organizer of this group. I started it 3 years ago with Bill, and he gestured with his elbow to a cute, muscular guy with enormous eyes and long sideburns sitting directly to his right, when we were seniors at Columbia. At the time, we felt there was very little sense of community among gay men on campus. The big gay dance on the first Friday of every month was about the only formal event that brought people together. Otherwise, everybody would leave campus with their friends and head downtown to drink and dance. And don't get me wrong, we love to drink and dance, but we thought there needed to be another way for gay men to get to know one another, and also to learn about the community's history and politics. So at this point, Bill introduces the book under discussion, which is a cultural history of gay sensibility. The discussion proceeds, it goes in all kinds of directions. Jimmy doesn't participate in the conversation because he's still trying to get his bearings. But then Gregory shifted the discussion, saying something about unanswered questions and plenty of time in the weeks ahead to continue debating the issues. But now, he said, since a lot of what we're reading this semester is about culture, not just history and politics, I thought it would be interesting and fun to do an analysis of a pop song as a kind of warm-up exercise. From a cloth bag on his lap, he withdrew a rainbow-colored stack of paper and passed it around. I've also been working on an essay about gay men and pop music for several months, and to be honest, I want to float a trial balloon. So I'm going to play the song Reel Around the Fountain from the Smiths' debut album of 1984. He dropped a tape into the boombox beneath his seat and pressed play. He said the lyrics could be found on the handout. There was a flurry of paper rustling, and then everyone and everything went still. Music filled the room. There is a patio with a fountain. 2 boys playing, running, bicycling. Their play turns violent, then sexual. The singer asks to be slapped, shoved, pinned, mounted. Jimmy glanced around the circle. Isaac sat with arms crossed, his chin resting in the palm of his hand, looking down at the lyric sheet on his lap. Jay stared up at the chandelier. Johann bit his lip and fidgeted. One guy closed his eyes, another cocked his head. Chetty furrowed his brow. The singer bemoans his love was never reciprocated. Their love never consummated. He says he would settle for 15 minutes with his beloved, even as he portrays him as aloof, violent, in need of comfort and salvation. In the end, he insists only he sees the worth of this worthless person, repeating his declaration like a maniacal marriage vow. I do, I do, I do, I do. The ooh sound drawn out like a wail of grief. Gregory stopped the tape. The room was silent. Jimmy, along with everyone else, waited in suspense. All eyes were on Gregory, who sat motionless, staring down at the Persian carpet, his hair half obscuring his face. We're running out of time, buddy, Bill whispered softly in his ear as he put an arm around his shoulder. We gotta keep moving. Gregory snapped to attention, brushed the hair from his face, and wiped tears from his eyes. I just wanted to make the point that the sensibility of the song, Morrissey can't imagine love with another man except at the price of being abused. The group remained silent. Jimmy's heart began to race. The song poses questions about the connection between being roughed up by a man and desiring him physically, which is an unacknowledged issue in a lot of gay sexuality, I think. That sounds a little fucked up to me, a wiry young guy with glasses said. Plus, I don't see why you assume he's singing to a man. It's just you. It could be anyone. It could be a woman. Several group members grunted their assent. Except we know sexual positions are gendered, Jay retorted. The man does the pinning, the woman gets pinned. But if a man is singing about wanting to get pinned, it feminizes him. And in the eyes of heterosexuals, a feminized man is a gay man. Why can't a woman do the pinning? Chetty asked rhetorically. No one said this is an uncomplicated expression of gay pride, Gregory put in. It's worse than that, it's self-hating. I don't see it that way, Gregory said valiantly. I think Morrissey is trying to say something about how gay men really feel about each other. And he has an analysis of his situation and the world around him that it's a silly pop song. No one turns to the Smiths for serious political discourse. Gregory asked, why not? At last, Jimmy's hand went up. My name is Jimmy. You mentioned you were writing an essay on gay men and pop music, he said, directly addressing Gregory. And I'm wondering how the Smiths and Morrissey and the ideas that come out in this song, how all that fits into the argument you're making in your essay. He could feel himself blushing. So maybe we can talk informally after the meeting, Bill said, addressing the group, but we do need to wrap up. Please hang out for a while. We have the room until 10, and make sure you grab next week's readings before you leave. They're on the table. Thanks, everyone. The circle broke up as people rose to put on coats, hats, and scarves. The room filled with chatter. A clutch of people quickly formed around Gregory. Jimmy wanted to wait until the group thinned out to tell Gregory how much he was interested in his project on gay men and pop music, and to reassure him he was writing something worthwhile and should keep at it. He thought he found his chance to approach, but then Gregory and Bill moved off to the side. As they talked, Gregory glanced over at Jimmy. Then others inserted themselves into the conversation. Jimmy knew he should do the same, but felt what he had to say could wait or even go unsaid altogether. What did it really matter? Obviously, Gregory had recovered from the drubbing he'd received. He did an about face and headed for the door. Jimmy. He turned to see Gregory. It was only now he realized how inviting his eyes were, how warm and brown. Or is it James? Either? He laughed nervously. Will you be back? Gregory's intimate tone suggested they'd already passed the formality of first introductions. Yeah, of course. He could have said something about Gregory's talk, but didn't want to risk spoiling the moment by saying the wrong thing. This was enough. Well, see you then, was all he added. See you, James. Excuse me. So Gregory and Jimmy start dating, but their relationship is rocky. In the space of a year, they go in and out of being boyfriends more than once. In the summer of 1988, about a year later, they rekindle their romance and take a trip to Boston in search of the places F.O. Matheson lived, worked, and died. By this time, Jimmy has started writing his dissertation on the relationship between Matheson's life and work. He's particularly keen on finding the Manger Hotel in Boston's North End, where Matheson killed himself. But when they get to the North End, they can't find the hotel. Tired and frustrated after walking in circles for nearly an hour, Gregory approaches a random passerby on the street. and asks him if he knows where the hotel is or was. Well, I don't know about the Manger Hotel, but I do know the Madison Hotel used to stand on this site. The bartender over there at the penalty box can tell you all about it. He pointed to a pub on the corner. Thanks, Gregory said, and the man went on his way. He turned to Jimmy. You see? He's not even talking about the same hotel. Well, I'm going to find this bartender, Gregory said, and crossed the street. Jimmy followed with a sigh. The penalty box was cool, dark, and empty of customers. The bartender stood with his back turned, hovering over the cash register. A small television against the mirror played an old episode of Hawaii Five-0. Gregory took a seat at the bar. What are you doing? Jimmy whispered. It doesn't even look like they're open. Oh, we're open, all right, the bartender said as he shut the drawer and swung around. The sound of the cash register bell filled the bar. Look, Gregory said. Just above the mirror hung a large framed photograph of the sloping roof and graceful spires of a building. The Madison neon signs still legible, twisting and plunging furiously into clouds of smoke and debris. Pinned to one side of the frame were several snapshots, including one of the Madison as it appeared before demolition. The bartender glanced behind him, then turned to Jimmy and Gregory again. That was the old Madison Hotel, which they tore down when they got rid of the old Boston Garden. Do you know anything about the Manger Hotel? Gregory asked. That was the Manger. I worked there as a bellhop and then as a doorman. They renamed it the Madison. Huge event the day they blew it up. People came to watch at 5 in the morning. It was on the TV news. See here. He reached up and pulled 2 snapshots from the frame. One of a handsome young man smartly dressed in his purple Manger Hotel uniform. The other, a distinguished looking gray-haired gentleman, the very person who stood before them with a large VIP blast pass sticker on his lapel. This is me, then and now. People cheered and sang songs when it came down. Like something to drink? They asked for a couple of beers. Yep, that was May 15th, 1983. 26,000 spectators, first thing in the morning. They stood on rooftops, bridges, parking lots, nearby streets, just to watch an explosion. Kids, dogs, you name it. Big event, like a block party. You know, the Madison was where the Beatles stayed when they first came to Boston in 1964. Grand hotel once upon a time. Joseph McCoy. He offered his hand. Gregory, this is James. He's doing research on a Harvard professor who died there. A lot of history in that hotel. Say, you fellas want some food? They nodded in unison. So they take a seat at one of the booths and they order some food. And then Jimmy gives Gregory a gift, which is a collection of Matheson's letters to his lover, Russell Cheney. I'm curious to read it. I feel like I know them now, Gregory smiled. Being with you last night reminded me how good I used to feel with you. Me too. Jimmy felt the stirring of an erection. And how I used to feel I could tell you anything, and you wouldn't judge me. I want you to feel that way. I know you never stopped caring about me. I never stopped, you're right. It's just, I know. You're the first boyfriend I ever had, and I always, Jimmy paused to collect his thoughts. I have so much to learn about being in a relationship, but you are very important to me. You have no idea. I'm glad, Gregory said, sipping his beer. So I feel I can tell you, I recently got tested again for HIV. Jimmy tensed up. And I'm happy to report the test came out negative. Oh shit, are you trying to scare me? Imagine how I felt having to wait for the results. Was there any doubt? Gregory leaned back. There's always doubt. No, but I mean, did you really think you might be HIV positive? Yes. Why? Because the virus is out there and Any of us. No, seriously, have you had unsafe sex? Are you interrogating me? I think I have a vested interest in knowing whether a friend has been having unsafe sex. Well, I prefer to say safer, because you never really know. People get a false sense of security or doom with words like safe and unsafe. It's not that simple and clear cut. Jimmy stared in disbelief. Sometimes you use a condom and there could be a tear you're not aware of, or you have foreplay and a drop of Gregory. James, you need to keep it down, he said quietly but forcefully. The warmth had gone out of his voice. Most people say you can't get it from cocksucking, and in the anal department, I only finger fucked you, so you're fine. It's not me I'm worried about. I'm only telling you this because I wanted to celebrate the fact that I'm HIV negative. One day at a time, you know? You said you wanted to know my status, so I'm telling you. One day at a time? Are you nuts? Mm-hmm. Well, technically, yes, I am nuts. Remember that little mental illness thing I have? Mm-hmm. The waitress arrived with the burgers. Anything else I can get you? No, just the check, Gregory said. She raised her eyebrows. Okay, gotcha. Gregory thrust the book back in its paper bag and stuffed it into his backpack. He took out his sunglass case and threw it down on the table. What are you doing? I thought you would understand. He put on the sunglasses and tossed the case back into his bag. Jimmy pushed his plate aside. Greg, you're telling me you're having unsafe sex. I'm telling you I'm HIV negative. You must think I'm an idiot. I don't appreciate being scolded. He slung his backpack over one shoulder and slid out of the booth. Where are you going? I need some air. Gregory walked out of the bar. Okay, I'm going to read you one more brief passage. Throughout the novel, James, who is now 53 years old and married, carries in his pocket an unopened letter from Gregory, found among Gregory's papers and given to him that evening by Gregory's older sister. James is reluctant to open and read the letter because he's trying to keep his feelings for Gregory at bay, but to no avail. Late in the novel, he takes an Uber from Manhattan back to his home and husband in Brooklyn and finds himself inevitably thinking about Gregory and how the world has changed since the turn of the 21st century. He caught a glimpse of the antenna atop One World Trade Center, the Freedom Tower, such bullshit. What would Gregory have thought about that? James sometimes had to remind himself Gregory missed that whole nightmare. Lucky him. Nowadays, whenever James heard or read about someone's death, all he could think was, ah, yes, you're well out of it. You escaped before X, whatever X might be. Lately, it was the presidential election, the Clinton and Trump campaigns. Before that, it was a long, demoralizing list. He looked back and could now see all of One World Trade Center. Not only did Gregory miss September 11th, 2001, he missed the 1993 Trade Center bombing. A student did his term project on it in the late 90s, and James remembered thinking at the time what a random choice of topic it was. Then it was the Rodney King riots, Bill Clinton's election, the Monica Lewinsky scandal, the OJ trial, the breakthrough in HIV drug treatment, the dissolution of ACT UP, the birth of Queer Nation, then the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore and the rise of red versus blue America, the September 11th attacks and everything that followed in their wake, the technological revolutions of the 90s and early 2000s. Now they were driving beneath the Gothic arches of the Brooklyn Bridge, all its lights twinkling, its strings choiring in the dark. The internet. He remembered when it was called the information superhighway. Email. He laughed dismissively the first time he heard the term used by a fellow graduate student, a Pakistani woman, it turns out. Cell phones. Traveling in Europe in 1999, he hooked up with a handsome young guy from Madrid who told him soon everyone was going to have one. the whole digital age, the advent of the iPhone, then the election of Barack Obama, the financial collapse that same year, the Tea Party, Occupy Wall Street, the shooting of Trayvon Martin and Black Lives Matter, now Hillary Clinton for president. James suspected, even once she got elected, Trump and his supporters wouldn't go away quietly, and he feared they would make everyone's life hell for the next year or two at least. Then don't ask, don't tell, marriage equality. What would Gregory have thought about that? Would he have championed it? No doubt he'd still be liberal if he were alive, or would he? It wasn't uncommon for people who were extremely liberal in their youth to turn the other way when they got older. Look at Morrissey. By some accounts, he was positively flirting with white supremacy nowadays. What would Gregory have thought about that? Would he be able to separate Morrissey's politics from his music, if such a thing could even be done? And assuming Gregory was still liberal, what kind of liberal would he be? Would he still identify as gay, or more radically as queer? Music okay? James snapped out of his reverie. Oh, whatever you want. I like to ask the customer's permission first. Mohammed, the Uber driver, touched the cell phone mounted to the dashboard, and the sound of a soft guitar filled the van. Dolly Parton began to sing, "I Will Always Love You," the last thing he expected. Funny, he didn't remember ever hearing her rendition of the song, though he learned somewhere along the way she'd written it herself. He was familiar with the stadium-sized covers by Linda Ronstadt and Whitney Houston. Dolly's original was altogether gentler and sweeter. She sounded as if she was actually singing to one person in particular, right there in front of her, face to face. It almost made James uncomfortable. It was so intimate. The sound so pure within the enclosed bubble of the SUV. You know, if anyone can heal the political divide in this country, Mohammed said, as if all this time he'd been tuning in to James's thoughts, it just might be Dolly Parton. If anybody has anything to say, any comments or questions, I welcome them.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, Jim.
I just say it's so interesting to see that the motif from or a theme from your last book is still here, like of the sort of the side thing, but the architectural destruction of buildings that had great value, or both as places for memories and important happenings, and because of the way they're put together.
Yeah, it's a theme that really interests me. And as you just said, the destruction and remaking of buildings is all about the passage of time, memory. Yeah. Renee.
Give an obvious question, but how much of this is autobiographical?
It's very autobiographical. Yeah, in fact, originally it was a memoir, and I put it in a drawer for about 15 or 20 years. And after having written a couple of novels, I decided to take another crack at it, but as fiction. And I made a lot of changes. And to my great delight, I finally felt I had solved the problem of the memoir, which is that I really didn't know what I was saying, especially about myself. And by creating the character of James/Jimmy, I was able to get some distance from that character and also really make it his story. So the other characters are a function of James, but it took a long time for me to get to that point. Yeah, Donnie.
I know I posted about this today, you and I talked already, but the density of information, the historical context that you put in a narrative, the thing that strikes me the most about this story is the romance. The elements and components of the romance between generations, between different types of gay men, challenging the ideas of what a gay male relationship could look like. And I think deeply appreciated that from this book. And I read Pennsylvania Station, so I know there are also overlaps, family dynamics that you include, sister and father. But I wanted to say that this struck me the most with the romantic element. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and one of the things that comes out in the book, you know, I mentioned Jimmy starts writing his dissertation about Matheson and Matheson's relationship with his partner, Russell Cheney. And Jimmy has never, until Gregory, had a serious relationship. So he reads the letters between Matheson and Cheney, and he's just completely gripped by the picture of their relationship that unfolds. Now, they met in the mid-1920s, and they spent a lot of time apart. So their relationship is really well documented. And interestingly, in the 1920s, they don't have a lot of role models for a gay relationship. So they're trying to figure out in their letters what this is and what do we call it, and is this a marriage? Do we tell other people? Who do we tell? And you know, they had differences of opinion about that. But Jimmy strongly identifies with the figure of young Ethel Matheson. And as did I when I read those letters back in the 80s.
You're the best.
Thank you, Maggie. Anything else? So please stick around. There's going to be more music, more food, more tequeños, and I'll be signing books and we can talk. And thank you again for coming.
I know we're a little tight in here, so if you want to fold up your chair, we'll make room to walk around and socialize. Keep the chairs open if you want to keep your chair. And we'll probably lean against the wall here and the railing, everyone on the railing, if you want to fold up your chairs. We'll pick those up. You don't need to bring them anyplace else, just fold them up. Patrick's books are available at the register at the front of the room, and please help yourself to food and beverage.